very complex. Okay, so let's now look at how the oligopoly, how the pricing and output decisions are made in an oligopoly, and what is the economic theory that explains these things. Okay, so now I told you last time that the oligopolist is pulled in two different directions. There is interdependence, and interdependence means that they want to there is an incentive to look into what the other person is doing and to collaborate. Okay, I won't use the word collaborate, but to depend on one another, ये एक incentive होता है. मगर दूसरा, the other thing is that they are being pulled in two different directions. They also want to compete. Why do they want to compete? Because, as I said, the oligopoly is a constant fight for market share. So obviously, if I want more market share, then I'm going to snatch that market share from you. So they want to, they have to collaborate, let's say, in some way, because they are interdependent, but they also want to compete. And these two policies then become incompatible with one another. Uh, the competition is going to drive the prices down. Okay, the competition, you see what happens in a perfectly competitive market. In a perfectly competitive market, there is competition, so the competition drives the prices down. But another feature of the oligopoly is that they have to compete in non-price ways, and they have to compete through advertising. Now advertising is a very major cost. Okay, so two things are happening: you competing, incentive to bring the price down. You are you are spending on advertising. That's increasing your cost. So which way do you go? So this is sort of two contradictory paths that are in front of the oligopolist. So we have things like, we have words like the cartel and the price leadership. So within the oligopoly there are two models. One is the non-collusive model. Okay, the non-collusive model, collusive means in which people do not collaborate, they do not, they compete, the competitive model. In this, you are going to look at the kinked demand curve, and you are going to look at game theory. These are the two things that we are going to do. They are both in oligopoly, and they are both the non-collusive, which means competitive model. And then there's the collusive model, in which, this irritating thing, always competing with one another. My god, it is an irritation. I always have to keep an eye on you, you always have to keep an eye on me. It irritates everybody. So this level of irritation reaches a point where the firms say, we now do not want to keep an eye on each other, we now want to collaborate, collude. Now that is against market ethics, because in market you must sort of compete with one another and give good quality and good prices to the customer. But that is not something that happens in the collusive model, and we are going to see that. However, we are now starting with the non-collusive model, and in the non-collusive model, the first thing that we do is the kinked demand curve. Now there, the kinked demand curve is drawn under certain assumptions. Okay, now what are the assumptions here? This model says that in an oligopoly you are faced with sticky prices. What do you mean by sticky prices? Prices are rigid. There is no incentive for me to change the price. Now I'm going to explain each and everything in detail, but let's first list these things down. There is no incentive for me to change the price. Okay, so prices remain stable. Despite the fact that costs and demand conditions can change, prices still remain stable. Why? There are several reasons. Okay, uh, because we have learned through experience that there's no point in competing on price. We don't want to compete on price, we want to compete on other things. Non-price competition is the norm here. Okay, and secondly, I'm content with the current price. At least I'm covering my costs. That may be another factor. Okay, One very important reason they do not compete on price is that if they start competing on price, they will allow uh, competitors to enter the market. Okay. uh, so that is another thing, to keep the competitors out. Now, at the current price, if it's high enough, you can carry out more sales promotion. Rather than bringing the price down, you can do more sales promotion. And finally, you have seen that non-price is the better option. It is the more viable option in this case. Okay. Why, after spending so much on advertising, you may not want to increase your prices further? Okay, I've spent so much on advertising. Now I have created the demand for the product, and now if I increase my price, or if I change my price at which I'm getting the required revenue, why should I take the risk? You will just stick to the going market price. And the stability of the price, this is then illustrated in the kinked demand curve. Now, let's quickly look at the assumptions behind the kinked demand curve. Number one, the kinked demand curve is created on the assumption that there is a prevailing market price on which everyone has agreed. Okay, so there's no incentive to change the price for whatever reason, for advertising, for non-price competition. People don't want to change the price. Okay, the attitude of one person towards price depends on the attitude of another person towards price. So again, they will only change the price if someone else disturbs the price. Otherwise, no. Otherwise, everyone is okay with the same price. Okay. um, if I change the price to increase my revenue, for example, then the other person will respond because of the presence of interdependence. So the constant responses that I'm getting whenever I change the price create a disincentive for me to change the price in any direction. So I don't want to change the price downward. I don't want to change the price upward, because the other people are going to react. Either they're going to react, or in a very calculated way, they will permit me to make a mistake if I made a mistake by changing the price. Please do keep that in mind. Sometimes they do not. Sometimes they do not change the price, but they are not changing the price not because they don't know, but they have calculated that it is better for me not to respond to a change of price that my competitor has made. Okay. So of course, let's look at this is the picture of the king demand curve, and the marginal cost curve. Please do keep in mind the final assumption: the marginal cost curve passes through this lower part. Okay, the marginal cost curve passes through the vertical part of the marginal revenue curve. Okay, so these are some of the assumptions under which the king demand curve is drawn, and the king demand curve is the first explanation in the competitive model, the non-collusive model. Okay, so in the next in the next part, then I'm going to look at what the king demand curve is, what it shows, what it illustrates, and why people don't change prices based on the theory of the king demand curve. Okay, so thank you very much, and stay tuned for the next video, please. Thank you.